Hi everybody, welcome to Live Blogger. I have combined all the videos in our product launch website design series into this single long video so that it's easy for you to follow. Now in this video we're going to design this website over here using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. And we also have this accordion over here. And this also has light and dark modes. And this is also completely responsive. So we're going to design this from scratch using HTML, CSS and JavaScript in this video. And I'll also show you how to deploy this website online so that others can see it. And I'll also leave the link of the source code in the description of this video. So let's get started. So this is how it looks. We can see that this is the hero section of our website. We also have this hover effect for this image and for this button as well. And if you scroll down, we have other sections of the website over here. And we can see that this navbar over here is having this glass effect when we scroll down. And then we have these sections over here. We also have the hover effect for these cards. And then we have another section for the steps. And then we have another section for the testimonials. And then we have this section for getting the email ID of the visitor. And then we have an FAQ section where we have these accordions, and we have this animation for opening and closing these questions. And then we have the footer over here. And we also have a dark mode for this website. So we can click on this button. And now we can see that this website is in the dark mode. And here we can see that all the sections are in the dark mode. And this is also completely responsive. So if I decrease the width of the browser window, this is how it will look on smaller screens. So here we can see that we have the correct layout for all these sections for the smaller screens as well. Right here I have created this folder called product launch, and I just opened it with VS Code. Now let's create the necessary file. So let's create a new file called index.html. Let's create another file called style.css. And let's create one more file called main.js. And let's start with the index.html file. Now in VS Code, you can just type exclamation and press tab, and you'll have this basic HTML5 code. And here in the title, let's go ahead and type Nova task, AI powered productivity. And the next thing we need to do is we need to get the link of the font. So let's go to Google Fonts. So you can just go to this website called fonts.google.com, and let's search for the font that we need. So we are using a font called Poppins inside our website. So let's search for Poppins. Now here let's go ahead and select this font, and let's click on Get Font, and let's click on Get Embed Code. Now here let's go ahead and click on Change Styles, and let's select the ones that we need. So we need to have 300, the light version. We need to have 400 regular. Then let's select medium and also semi-bold and bold. Now let's go ahead and copy this code. So let's click on copy code. Let's go back to our HTML file and let's paste it over here. Right now let's go ahead and get the link of Font Awesome, because we're going to use some icons from Font Awesome. So you can just search for Font Awesome Syrian and you'll find this link of Syrian.js. So let's open this and let's go ahead and copy this all.min.css from here. So let's click on this copy link tag. Let's go back and paste it over here. Alright, that's it with our fonts and icons. Now let's go ahead and start with the markup of our website. So the first thing we will do is we'll create a division with the class of page wrapper. And in that we will have the main nav. So this is the main nav. So let's create a nav element and let's give it a class of main nav. And in that we will have a container. So for the container we will have a max width in our CSS. Now here we'll also give it a class of nav container, so that if you want to style it differently we can do that. And let's add an h1 over here, and let's type Nova task, and let's also give it a class of logo. And now let's go ahead and create a button. So the button is this button right here for the dark mode. So in the button we need to add two icons. So first of all let's give it an ID. So let's type theme toggle for the ID, and let's give it a class of theme toggle button. Right, now let's write the code for the icon. So you can just type I. So the I tag is used for icons in Font Awesome, and you can just add the class. So for the sun icon, we have a class called FAS FA-sun, and let's close this. So this will give us the sun icon. I'll just open this in our browser and let's see how it looks. So I have this extension called Live Server installed in VS Code. So once you have this installed, you can just go ahead and right click over here in the HTML and click on Open with Live Server. And here we can see we have the icon being displayed. Alright, now let's add another icon. So for this icon, let's give it a class of FAS FA-moon. So this will give us this moon icon. So that's basically it with the navbar. Right, now let's add the CSS. So let's go to a style or CSS file and let's start adding the CSS. First of all, let's add some global styles. So let's select everything. Let's type margin 0, padding 0, and box sizing border box so that we have the correct height and width for all the elements. Right, now let's target the body and let's set the font family to the font that we selected. So here let's go ahead and type Poppins and sans serif. And let's set the line height of everything to 1.7. And now let's add a background color. So for the background color, we will use a CSS variable. So let's create a variable over here. Let's type :root, and this will be accessible throughout our website. So here let's create a variable called bg color light, and let's set the value to white. Now since we have this dark theme also, we need to use one more variable for bg color dark, but we'll do that later. Right, now let's go ahead and use this color right here. So let's type var bg color light, and for all the text color, let's type var, and let's create a variable called text color light. So let's type text color light, and for text color light, let's give it a value of 2D3748, and let's use that over here, text color light. Now when we switch to the dark theme, we need to also have this smooth transition. So for that, let's add a transition to the background. So let's type transition background color, and for the transition speed, let's create a variable. So let's name it transition speed, and let's set the value to 0.3 seconds, and let's use that over here. I'll just type var transition speed, and for the easing, let's type ease, and let's add the transition for the color as well. So this is the color of the text, so let's type var transition speed ease, and now let's set the font weight to 400, which is the regular font weight. Right, now let's go ahead and target the container. So we have this container division over here, and in that we have all the content. So let's type dot container, and for the container we will have a max width, and we'll create a variable for this as well. So here let's create a variable called container width, and we'll set the value to 1140 pixels, and let's use that over here, var container width, and let's bring everything to the center. So let's type margin 0 auto, and let's set the padding to 0 top and bottom, 20 pixels left and right. We don't have the container styles being added, so let's go to our HTML file, and here we haven't linked our CSS file. So let's type link, and here in the href, let's type style or CSS. Right, now we can see that the styles are being added. Right, now let's style this nav element called main nav. So here I'll just type main nav. Now we want it to be fixed in one place even if we scroll down, and for that let's set the position to fixed, and let's set the top position to 0, and let's add a z index of 1000 so that it's above all the other elements. Let's also set the width to 100%. Let's add some padding. Let's type padding of 1.5 rem 0, and let's add a background color. So let's type background, and let's set it to RGBA 255, 255, 255, and for the opacity let's type 0.3, and for the glass effect let's also add backdrop filter, and let's set it to blur 12 pixels, and for some other browsers also let's type WebKit backdrop filter, and let's set it to blur 12 pixels as well, and let's type box shadow, and let's set it to none, because after we scroll down we will have the box shadow over here. So initially we don't want to have the box shadow. And after that, let's go ahead and add a transition, because when we scroll down, we need to have the smooth transition from going from this state to the state with the smaller height. So let's add a transition for that as well. Let's type transition padding, and let's set it to var transition speed. And for the easing, let's type ease in out. And for the background color, let's type var transition speed ease in out. And for the box shadow, let's go ahead and type var transition speed ease in out. Right now, let's go ahead and style this nav container. And in the nav container, we have this h1 and this button. Let's type nav container. And we need to have these elements on the left and the extreme right sides. So for that, let's type display of flex, justify content, space between. And now we can see that these elements are to the extreme left and right sides. Let's also align items to the center. Right now, let's target the logo. So here inside the main nav, we have this h1 with a class of logo. So let's target this. I'll just type main nav logo. And for the logo, let's set the font size to 1.75 rem. And let's set the color to a variable. So let's create a variable over here, and let's give it a name of logo color. Now we need to have two different colors for the logo. So for the light version, we need to have a different color for the logo, and for the dark version, we need to have a different color. So for that, let's go ahead and create two variables over here. Let's create one with a name of logo color light, and for this light logo color, we need to have the same color as the primary color. So this is basically the primary color that we have. So let's go ahead and create a variable for the primary color first. So here let's type primary color light, and let's set the value to 6a 11cb. And here for the logo color light, let's type var primary color light. So this will use the same color that we have over here. And for the logo color dark, we need to have a different color. So I'll just add a comment. I'll just type dark theme, and here let's type light theme. Let's type default. So this will be the default theme. So in the dark theme, let's go ahead and set the logo color dark, and let's set the value to another primary color that we use for the dark theme. So here let's type -- primary color dark, and for the dark primary color, let's set the value to 9f7 AEA, and let's use this same color for the logo color dark. So let's type var primary color dark, and we need to have these two colors for the dark version as well. So let's create that over here. So let's type --bg color dark, and for bg color dark, let's type 1a202c, and let's type text color dark. Now here we already have text color light. So here we are creating for the dark theme. So let's set the value to E2E8F0. But now what we will do is we'll create one more selector over here, and here let's create a variable called logo color, and here we'll just simply go ahead and type var logo color light. Now if we have the dark theme, then we will add a class called dark mode to the body. So what we'll do is here we'll just type body.dark mode. So if you have the dark mode class added to the body, we'll just go ahead and copy this and paste it over here, and here let's type logo color dark. And here we need to do the same for the text color and the background color as well. So let's type --bg color, and let's set it to var bg color light over here. And for the text color, let's type text color. Let's type var text color light, and here in the dark mode, let's go ahead and type bg color, and let's type var bg color dark. And for the text color, let's type text color. Let's type var text color dark. So here what we're basically doing is that we are creating these variables for using in our code, and based on whether we have the dark or the light theme, we are going to use the correct color from these colors over here. So now we can simply go ahead and use these colors, logo color, bg color, text color, and it will change based on the theme that we have active. Now there are two vars displayed over here. Let's remove these. Right now let's set the color of this logo to var logo color. Right now if you go back to our website, here we can see that we have the correct color for the logo. Now while we are here, let's also add the primary color. So here let's type -- primary color, and here let's type var primary color light, and we need to remove the second var from here. Right now here let's copy this. Let's paste it over here for the light theme. So here we need to change this to dark, and here we have light. So now when we use primary color, it will select primary color light or dark based on the theme. Alright, let's scroll down, and here for the logo, let's set margin bottom to 0. Let's set the font weight to 700, and we'll also add a transition so that when we scroll down we have the correct smooth animation. So let's have font size, and let's set the speed to var transition speed, and for the easing let's tap ease in out. Right now we need to style these two buttons that we have over here. So let's type, we have this class over here called theme toggle button. So let's type dot theme toggle button. Let's add a background of transparent. Let's set the border to 1 pixel solid, and for the color let's type var input border, and now let's create this color. So let's go to our variables, and here we need to create the variable for the light and the dark. So let's type input border light, and let's set the value to E2 E8F0, and let's create one more variable for the dark color. So let's type input border dark, and let's set the value to 4A5568, and let's create this variable over here for using it in our code. So let's type input border, and let's set it to var input border light, and here in the dark mode let's type input border var input border dark. So now we can use this input border. So here we have used var input border for the color. Right now let's go ahead and set the color to var text color. Let's set the padding to 0.5 rem, 0.75 rem, and let's set the border radius, and we'll create a variable for this as well. So we'll create a variable called border radius. So let's scroll up, and here let's add a comment called universal variables, and here let's type border radius, and let's set the value to 0.5 rem. Right now let's set the cursor to pointer. So when we hover over this, we have this cursor, and let's set the font size, and let's set it to 1 rem. Let's set the display to flex, align items to the center, and justify content to the center. And now we can see that it is in the center. Let's also add a transition so that we have this smooth transition when we go from the dark to the light modes. So let's tap transition, and let's set the values to background color, var transition speed, ease, and for the color of the text let's tap var transition speed, ease, and for the border color let's tap var transition speed, ease. Right now we need to display just one of these icons at a time. So by default we need to just display the FA Sun icon. So let's tap theme toggle button, and we have this class of FA Sun. So let's tap .fa sun, and let's set the display to inline block, and let's target the other icons. So let's tap theme toggle button, and it is called FA Moon. Let's set the display to none, and now we can see that we have just one icon. And now when we hover over this, we need to have a slight hover effect. So let's type theme toggle button : hover, and let's type border color, and let's set it to var text color. And now if we go back, here we can see that we have this hover effect. So with that we have styled our navbar. Alright, this is our source code, and I also added this images folder over here, and in that we have these images which we're going to use in our design. So let's go ahead and start by writing the HTML of the hero section. So here after the nav, let's go ahead and add a comment. Let's tap end of navbar, and let's create a header, and let's give it a class of hero, And in this header, we will have another division with the class of container. And let's also give it a class of hero container. And in this container, we will have the hero content. So on the left side, we can see that we have all this text content. And on the right side, we have this image. So let's go ahead and create a division with the class of hero content. Now in this hero content, we need to have a tagline first of all over here with this text feature of productivity is here. So let's copy this. And let's create a span and let's give the class of hero tagline. And let's paste it over here. And after that, we need to have this text, intelligent task management reimagined. So just copy this. Let's go back and let's create an h2 and let's paste it over here. After that, we need to have this paragraph. So I'll just copy this and let's create a p tag. Let's also give it a class of subtitle. And let's paste the paragraph over here. And after that, we need to have this button. So for the button, we'll create an anchor tag. So let's go outside the paragraph. Let's create an anchor tag. And when we click on this button, we go to this sign up section over here. So for that, let's go ahead and add hash sign up over here. And we'll create another division with this ID of sign up, and it'll be redirected to that section. All right, let's also give it a class. So let's give it a class of CTA button and hero CTA. And here, let's go ahead and add this text. Let's type get early access updates. So I'll just paste it over here. And after that, we need to have this section over here on the right side. So for that, let's go ahead and go outside this hero content. And let's create another division with a class of hero image container. And in this, we'll create this shape first of all. So we have this shape which animates in the background. So let's go ahead and create a division with the class of hero image bg shape. And we will style that using CSS. Now for the image, let's create an img tag and let's add the source. So let's type images / and we have this image called hero image.png. Let's add that over here. And in the alt, let's go ahead and type Nova task app mockup. And let's give it a class of hero main image. And with that, we have completed writing the HTML of our hero section. So let's go ahead and add this comment. Let's type end of hero section. Let's go back to our website, and this is how it looks. We have all the content displayed over here. Now let's start writing the CSS. Now before adding the CSS for this hero section, let's add some more hover effect for this toggle button. So if you go to the original website and if I hover over this, we can see that we also have a background being changed over here. So let's do that. Let's go back and let's go to the style.css file. Here in the theme toggle button hover, let's add one more property. Let's tap background color mix. So this is a new function in CSS which will blend two different colors. So let's tap in sRGB. So this is the format that we want. And let's tap var. Let's tap text color. So the first color will be text color, and it'll be 10%, and the rest will be transparent. So now if you go ahead and hover over this, we can see that the background is also changing. Right, now let's start with the styling of the hero section. So first of all, let's add some styling to all the headings. So let's add a comment. Let's tap general typography. And here let's target the H1, H2, and S3. And let's set the color of all these to var text color. And let's set the font weight of all of these to 600. Let's set the line height of all the headings to 1.3. And let's add a margin bottom of 0.5 ems. Right, now let's add some specific styles to these headings. So for the H2, let's add a font size of 2.5 rem. And for the S3, let's add a font size of 1.5 rem. And let's also target all the paragraphs, and let's add a margin bottom of 1 rem. And let's set the color of the paragraph text to another variable. So we'll create a new variable called text muted. So let's go ahead and do that. Here in the root, let's create a new variable called text muted light. And let's set the value to 718096. And here let's add the dark variant. So here let's type hyphen text muted dark. And for this, let's add the color as A0 AEC0. Right, let's remove this container width from here and let's add it in the universal variables. And let's do that for the transition speed as well. So now everything is organized. Right, now let's create this variable over here which we will use in our CSS code. So let's tap hyphen text muted, and let's set the value to var hyphen text muted light. And here for the dark version, so we have body dark mode. So here let's type hyphen text muted. Let's type var text muted dark. Right, now we can use this text muted variable and it will change based on whether it is the dark or the light theme. Right, now let's scroll down and now let's target the anchor tags. Now for the anchor tags, we will remove the underline. So let's type text decoration to none. And let's set the color to var primary color. So now we can see we have this primary color as the color of the anchor tag. And let's also add a hover effect for the anchor tag. So let's type a:hover. And let's set the color to var secondary color. So we haven't created this variable. We'll just create it in a minute. Before that, let's add this transition over here so that we have a smooth transition. So let's type transition of color. And let's set it to 0.2 seconds ease. Alright, so now let's create the variable for the secondary color. So let's type hyphen secondary color light. And let's set the value to 2575 FC. And here let's add secondary color dark. And let's set the value to 63 B3ED. Right, now let's go ahead and add the variable over here. So let's type hyphen secondary color. Let's type var secondary color light. And here for the dark mode, let's type var hyphen secondary color var secondary color dark. Right, now we can use this secondary color variable over here. So now if you go back and if I hover over this, we can see that the color changes to the secondary color. Right, now let's go back and let's target the hero class. So here we have this header with a class of hero. So let's target this. I'll just add a comment. Let's type hero section. Let's type .hero. And let's set the background color to var bg color. So we already created this variable over here, bg color, for the light and the dark versions. So the next thing we will do is we will add a padding of 1 rem top and bottom, 0 for left and right. And we have this navbar at the top, so we need to add some padding top as well. So let's type padding top of 6 rem. And this is how it looks. Right, now when we go to the dark mode, we can see that the background color changes smoothly. So let's add a transition for the background color. So let's type transition background color. Let's type var transition speed, and for the easing, let's type ease. Right, now let's go ahead and target the hero container. So here we can see we have this hero container, and in the hero container we have the hero content and the hero image container. So we want both of these to be side by side. So let's type hero container. Let's set the display to flex, align items to the center, justify content to space between so that they are on the extreme left and right sides, and let's add a gap of 3 rems. And this is how it looks. We have the text content on the left side and the image on the right side. Right, now let's go ahead and target the hero content. So in the content we have this text content. So let's type hero content, and let's type flex 155%. Now this is a short form for flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis. So what we are telling it is that we want it to grow if it has enough space, and if it doesn't have enough space, then we want it to shrink, and we want to start it with this size over here, so 55%. So this is what it means. And let's add a max width of 600 pixels, and this is how it looks. Right, now let's go ahead and target the image container. So here we have this division with the class of hero image container. So let's go ahead and type hero image container, and let's set the flex to 1. one 40%, which means it can grow or shrink, and it should start with 40% of the size. And let's also type display of flex and align items to the center, justify content to the center so that it is at the center of this hero image container division. And now let's also target the image. So let's type hero, and I think we have a class called hero main image. So let's target this hero main image. So for the hero main image, let's go ahead and type max width. Let's set it to 100%. And now we can see that it has the correct width. Let's also set the height to auto. Right now, let's continue styling the left portion of our hero section. So if you go back to the index.html file, here we can see that we have this hero tagline. So let's style this first. Let's go ahead and type hero tagline. And let's set the display to inline block. And let's set a background color of color mix and in sRGB. And for the color, let's type var primary color. And for the percentage, let's type 10%. And for the next color, let's type transparent. And it will be the rest of the percentage. So now if you go back here, we can see that we have this background color. Let's also add some padding. So let's type padding of 0.375 rem and 1 rem for left and right. Let's set the font size to 0.875 rem. Let's set the font weight to 600. Let's add a margin bottom of 1 rem. Let's also add rounded corners. So let's type border radius. Let's set it to a large value so that we have this rounded shape over here. And let's set the color of the text to var primary color. So this is how it looks. So we have styled the hero tagline. Right now let's style this h2 inside the hero content. So let's type hero content h2. Let's set the font size to 3 rem. Let's set the font weight to 700. Let's add a margin bottom of 1 rem. So this is how it looks. Now let's target the hero content subtitle. So we have this paragraph with the class of subtitle. So let's type hero content subtitle. Let's set the font size to 1.125 rems. Let's add a margin bottom of 2 rem. Right now let's style this CTA button. So we have already added this class of CTA button over here. So let's target that. Let's go ahead and type CTA button. Let's set the display to inline block, because by default it will be inline because we have set it to an anchor tag. Right now let's add a background color and let's set it to linear gradient. And let's type 45 degrees for the angle. And the first color will be var primary color. And the second color will be var secondary color. So now if we go back, we can see that we have this background color over here. Let's also set the color of the text to white. Let's also add a padding of 0.875 rem and 2 rem. And let's add rounded corners. Let's type border radius, and we will use a variable that we created called border radius. Let's set the font size to 1 rem. Let's set the font weight to 600. Let's type text transform uppercase so that we have uppercase text. Let's add a letter spacing of 0.025 rem. Let's set the cursor to pointer. And when you hover over this, now we can see that we have the pointer. Now let's also add a box shadow. So let's type box shadow. And let's set the value to 0, 4 pixels, 15 pixels. And for the color, let's type color mix. And here let's type in sRGB. For the first color, let's type var primary color. And it'll be 30%. And the next color will be transparent. So now we have this box shadow over here. Right now we need to add a hover effect. So let's also add a transition over here for that. Let's type transition and let's type transform 0.2 seconds ease and box shadow 0.2 seconds ease. So we will add transitions for transform and box shadow. So when you hover over this, we need to move it up a little bit. So let's go ahead and type CTA button colon hover, and let's type transform translate y -3 pixels. Let's set the box shadow to 0, 7 pixels, 20 pixels, color mix, and let's tap in sRGB, var, primary color, 30% and transparent. And let's also set the color to white when we hover over this. So now when we hover over this, we can see that we have the correct hover effect. Right now let's create this shape that we see over here behind this hero image. Now for that we have already created this division with the class of hero image bg shape. So let's target this. Here let's go ahead and type hero image bg shape. Now we need to position this relative to the hero image container. So here for the container, let's tap position relative. And here for the bg shape, let's tap position absolute. Let's set the width to 120%. Let's set the height to 120%. Let's add a background color of linear gradient 135 degrees. And for the first color, let's tap color mix in sRGB, var, primary color, 15%, transparent. And for the second color, let's tap color mix in sRGB, var, secondary color, 10% and transparent. And now if we go back, we can see that we have this background shape over here. Now to add this blob shape, we will use border radius. So let's tap border radius. And we will add some values over here. So let's type 30%, 70%, 70%, 30% divided by 30%, 30%, 70%, and 70%. Now you can experiment with different values and get the desired result. For now, if I save this and if I go back, here we can see that we have this blob shape. Right now, let's add an opacity and let's set it to 0.5 and let's set the z index to 0. And for the hero image, let's set the z index to 1. Right now, when we hover over this image, we need to have this hover effect. So let's do that. Let's go back and here let's type hero main image. And let's tap colon hover. And let's tap transform, scale 1.05. And let's also rotate it -1 degree. And let's also add smooth transition. So here, let's tap transition, transform 0.4 seconds. Cubic Bezier for the easing. Let's tap 0.25, 0.8, 0.25, 1. And for the box shadow, let's tap 0.4 seconds. Cubic Bezier. And let's add the same value over here, 0.8, 0.25, 1. And now if you go back and if I hover over this, we can see that we have the correct hover effect. Now the last thing we need to do in this hero section is animate this background shape. So for that, let's go back and here for the BG shape, let's tap animation and let's create an animation called morph. Let's set it to 15 seconds ease in out, and it should run for infinite amount of times and alternate. So first of all, it will run from 0 to 100, then it will run from 100 to 0. So it will alternate in this way and run for infinite amount of times. Right now, let's create this animation. So let's tap add keyframes. Let's name it morph. And for 0%, let's go ahead and type border radius. Let's set the values to the same values over here. So let's copy this and paste it over here. And let's tap transform, rotate 0 degrees and scale 1. Now for 50%, let's tap border radius, 60%, 40%, 30%, 70% divided by 70%, 50%, 50% and 30%. And for the transform, let's tap rotate 10 degrees and scale 1.05. Right now let's type 100% and here let's type border radius and we'll add the same values over here. So let's copy this and paste it over here, and we will add the same value over here for the transform as well. So let's paste it over here. And now if you go back here, we can see that we have the background shape being animated. So everything is working all right. So with that, we have styled the hero section of our website. All right, this is our source code. And before getting started with the benefits section, let's go ahead and add a line of CSS for this whole page wrapper. So if you go back to the HTML file, here we can see that we have this main container division with the class of page wrapper. And right now, if we just zoom in a little bit, we can see that we are able to scroll to the right. That's because of this BG shape that we have over here. So for that, we'll just go back to the CSS and let's add one line of CSS for the page wrapper. So here, let's go ahead and type dot page wrapper. Let's set the overflow X to hidden. And now we cannot scroll to the right. So now let's go ahead and start with our features section. So let's go back to our HTML file, and here we can see that the header ends over here. Let's create a section with a class of features. And in this section, we will have a container division so that we have a specific max width. Now in this, we need to have a division for this section where we have the header. And if you scroll down, we can see that we have the same type of header for all these other sections. So let's go back over here and let's create a division with the class of section header. And in this, we need to have this text over here first. So for that, we'll just create a span, and I'll just add this text, core benefits. And then for the heading, let's create an H2. And here let's type why choose Nova task. I'll just copy this and paste it over here. And after that, we need to have the features list. So let's create a container division for this. And let's give it a class of features layout. And in that, we will have each of these feature item. So let's tap feature item. Now in this, we need to have the icon. So let's create a division with the class of feature icon. And let's add a font awesome icon over here. So let's create an I tag, and let's give it a class of FAS, FA brain. So here we can see we have this brain icon. And after that, we need to have the feature text. So let's create a division for that. Let's create a division with the class of feature text. And in this, we will have an S3. And let's add this heading over here. And after that, we need to have this text. So let's copy this. And let's create a paragraph, and let's add the text over here. Now let's go ahead and copy and paste this feature item 3 more times, because we have 4 features in total. So I'll just paste it 3 more times. And let's change the content. So for the second one, let's change the icon to this icon right here. So for this, we need to type FA bullseye. So here we can see we have this icon. Let's change the text. I'll just copy this and paste it right here. And let's copy this and let's paste it over here. And then we have the next one, and for this icon we have to give it a class of chart pie. And let's copy the text. Let's paste it over here. And let's copy this paragraph. And let's paste it over here. And lastly, we have another icon, which is this one right here. So for that, we need to type FA sync alt. So here we have this icon. And let's copy this text and paste it over here. And let's copy this text and let's paste it over here. And with that, we have finished writing the HTML for the featured section. So let's go outside the section and let's create a comment. I'll just tap end of features section. Right now, let's start adding the CSS and let's start making it look like this. So let's go to style.css file. Let's create a comment and let's type features section. And first of all, let's target the section header. And in the section header, we have these 2 text. We have this span and this heading. So first of all, let's make it center aligned. So let's type text align center. And then let's type margin bottom of 3 rems. Now let's target this span inside the section header. So let's type section header span. And let's set the font size to 0.875 rem. And let's go ahead and set the color to var primary color. And let's set the font weight to 600. Let's set the text transform to uppercase. Let's set the letter spacing to 0.05 rem. And let's set the margin bottom to 0.5 rem. Right now, let's target this h2. So let's type section header h2. And let's add a margin bottom of 0.25 rem. Now here we can see for the features section, we have a different background. So let's target the features division. So here we can see we have this section with a class of features. So let's target this. I'll just type dot features, and let's add a background color over here. So let's type background color, and we'll create a variable called section bg. So let's type section bg. So let's scroll up and let's add the variable over here. So here let's create a variable called section bg light, and let's set the color to 718096, and let's add it for the dark color as well. So let's type section bg dark, and for this one let's set the color to 2d3748. Right now let's add the variable that we will use in our CSS. So here let's type section bg, let's set it to var section bg light, and here for the dark version let's type section bg var section bg dark. Right now let's scroll down and let's add some padding. So let's type padding of 5 rem, top and bottom, 0 for left and right. Now when we change the theme, we can see that the background color changes in a smooth manner. So for that, let's add a transition, and let's set it to background color var transition speed ease. Right now let's target the features layout. So here we can see we have this division with the class of features layout. So let's target that features layout. Now in the features layout, we have these 4 different features. So we will use a display of grid so that it is placed perfectly. Now here in our website, the color is not correct. So let's go back and let's see what's the problem. Here we have set it to section bg. Let's scroll up, and here for the section bg light, we have given this color. So I think this is not the right color. We need to give it a lighter color. So let's type F7 FAFC. Now let's go back, and now we can see we have the correct color. Right now we scroll down, and here right now we can see that the bg shape that we see over here is being displayed inside this section as well. Now if you want to remove this, we can just go ahead and add a position of relative over here, and now we can see that the bg shape is not being displayed. But if you want to keep it, you can just remove this line of code. So let's go ahead and start adding the styles for features layout. Let's set the display to grid. Let's type grid template columns, and let's set it to repeat to 1fr. So it will have 2 columns with the same width. So now we can see that we have these 2 columns. Let's also set a gap. So let's set the gap to 2.5 rem, and this is how it looks. Right now let's target these feature item divisions. So here we can see that we have these feature item divisions for each of the single features. So let's target this division. Here I'll just type feature item, and let's add a background color over here. So we will create a variable called card bg. So let's scroll up and let's create the variable. So here let's type card bg light for the light version, and let's set the color to white. And here for the dark theme, let's go ahead and type card bg dark, and let's set the color to 2d3748. And here let's add the variable that we can use in our code. So let's type card bg var card bg light, and for the dark theme, let's type card bg var card bg dark. And let's scroll down, and let's also add a border radius, and let's set it to the variable that we created called border radius. And let's add a padding of 2 rem. Let's also add a box shadow, and let's create a variable for this, and we'll create a variable called card shadow. Let's scroll up and let's create the variable over here. So here for the light version, let's type card shadow light, Let's set the value to 0, 4 pixels, 6 pixels, negative 1 pixel, RGBA, 0, 0, 0 and 0.1. Let's create it for the dark version. So let's tap card shadow dark and let's set the value to 0, 4 pixels, 6 pixels, negative 1 pixel, RGBA, 0, 0, 0 and 0.3. We will add one more shadow for better effect. So let's tap comma, 0, 2 pixels, 4 pixel, negative 1 pixel, RGBA, 0, 0, 0 and 0.06. And here for the dark version, let's tap comma, 0, 2 pixel, 4 pixels, negative 1 pixel, RGBA, 0, 0, 0 and 0.25. Right now let's go over here and let's add the variables here. So let's tap card shadow. Let's set it to var card shadow light. And here let's type for the dark version card shadow var card shadow dark. Let's scroll down and let's continue with the styling. If you go back to our website, here we can see that we have the box shadow being displayed. Right now when we hover over this, we need to have a hover effect. So here we can see when we hover over this, we have this effect. So let's add that hover effect. Let's go back. Let's tap feature item colon hover. Let's set the transform to translate y, negative 8 pixels. We'll also add a scale of 1.02 and let's also change the box shadow. Let's set it to 0, 15 pixels, 30 pixels, negative 5 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0, 0.12. Let's add one more box shadow. Let's type 0, 8 pixels, 10 pixels, negative 6 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0 and 0.1. And we also need to add a transition for smooth hover effect. So let's type transition. And for the transform, let's type 0.3 seconds, cubic Bezier. And here let's type 0.25, 0.8, 0.25 and 1. And then for the box shadow, let's type 0.3 seconds, cubic Bezier, 0.25, 0.8, 0.25 and 1. And let's also add it for the background color. And we will use the variable that we created for transition speed right here. And let's set it to ease for the easing. And this is how it looks. Right now let's style this icon. So for the icon, we have this class of feature icon. So let's target that. I'll just type feature icon. Let's set the font size to 2.25 rem. Let's set the color to var primary color. Let's add a margin bottom of 1.5 rem. Let's add a padding of 0.75 rem. Let's set the background color to color mix in sRGB. For the first color, let's type var primary color and let's type 10%. For the second color, let's type transparent. So this will blend the two colors and this is how it looks. Now we don't want to have this full width for this background. So let's type display of inline flex. Let's also add some border radius for rounded corners. I'll just type border radius of 0.375 rem. Now when we hover over this, we need to make some changes. So we need to rotate it and also change the color. So let's go ahead and add a transition over here. Let's tap transform, 0.3 seconds ease and color 0.3 seconds ease. Let's type feature item colon hover and feature icon. So when we hover over this feature item, we need to add these styles to the feature icon. So here let's tap transform, scale of 1.1, rotate to -5 degrees, and let's set the color to var secondary color. So now if you go back here, we can see that we have the correct hover effect. Right now let's style these text. So let's go back and okay, let's type feature text S3, because here we can see we have this division with the class of feature text, and in that we have this S3. And here let's set the font size to 1.375 rem. Let's set the color to var text color. Let's set the margin bottom to 0.75 rem, and let's set the font weight to 600. Right now let's style this paragraph. So let's type feature text P. Let's set the font size to 0.9 95 rem. Let's set the color to var text muted. Let's set the line height to 1.7. Let's set the margin bottom to 0. So this is how it looks. If we go to the original design, we can see that we also have this shape over here on the right side of the card, and it also has this hover effect. So let's create this. Let's go back, and we will use a before selector for that, and we need to set the position of that relative to the feature item. So here for the feature item, let's set the position to relative, and let's scroll down, and here let's type feature item colon before. Let's set the position to absolute. Let's set the content to blank, and let's set the top position to negative 50 pixels, and let's set the right position to negative 50 pixels. Let's set the width to 150 pixels, and let's set the height to 150 pixels as well. Let's add a background color of var primary color, and this is how it looks. Let's also set the opacity. So let's type opacity of 0.03, and let's add a border radius of 50% so that we have round shape. Now we don't want this to be selected, so let's set the pointer events to none. And right now we can see that this is being displayed outside the card as well. So let's go back to the feature item, and here we will just type overflow of hidden so that anything outside it will be hidden. So this is how it looks. Now let's add the hover effect. So here let's add a transition for that. Let's type transition opacity 0.3 seconds ease, transform 0.4 seconds ease, and here let's type feature item colon hover colon before. So when we hover over this feature item, we will have these styles added to the before. So let's type opacity of 0.06, and let's go back. Let's also change the scaling. So let's type transform scale of 1.1, and this is how it looks. And with that, we have styled the features section in our website. Now while we are here, let's also add some basic responsiveness. So let's go back, and let's add a media query, and let's type at media max width of, let's try 760 pixels. Let's type features layout. Let's type grid template columns. I'll just type 1FR because we need to have just one column in larger screens, and let's set the gap to 2 rem. And let's go back, and let's reduce the width of the browser window, and this is how it looks on smaller screens. So everything is working all right. Now for the feature item, let's type feature item, and let's set the padding to 1.5 rem. And for the feature icon, let's set the font size to 2 rem, and let's set the margin bottom to 1 rem. And for the S3 inside feature text, let's go ahead and set the font size to 1.25 rem. So with that, we have also made this responsive. Now here's my source code. So let's go to the HTML file, and let's start writing the markup first of all. So let's go outside the features section. Let's create a section with the class of how it works. And in this we'll create a container division. And in the container division, we will have a section header, just like we did for the features section. So in the section header, we need to have a span and an h2. So let's copy this, and let's paste it over here, and let's change the text. So if you go back to our original website, we have this text over here. So let's copy this. Let's paste it right here. And let's copy this, and let's paste it right here. And after that, we can see that we have these different divs over here. And this is basically timeline. So we have the first task over here, and then we have the second one and the third one. So we'll create a division with the class of timeline. Now in this, we'll create timeline items. So let's type timeline item. And this timeline item, we need to have an icon first of all. So let's create a division for that. I'll just create a division with the class of timeline icon. And in this, we'll create a font awesome icon. So let's create an I tag with the class of FAS and FA tasks. So if you go back to our website, here we can see that we have this icon over here. And then we need to have the next thing, which is this heading. So let's add both of these inside a division with the class of timeline content. So here let's type timeline content, and let's create an S3, and let's paste this text over here. And then let's create a paragraph tag, and let's paste this text over here. Now we need to create 2 more timeline items. So let's copy this, and let's create 2 more of these. And let's change the icon first of all for the second one. So here we need to change the icon to FAQs. And here we have the second icon. And let's copy this text, and let's paste it over here. And let's copy this text, and let's paste it over here. And then we have the third one, and for that we will change the icon to this calendar icon. So for that we need to type FA calendar check, and here we have the icon. So let's copy this text, and let's paste it inside the S3, and let's copy this text, and let's paste it right here. And with that we have completed creating the how it works section. So let's go outside the section, and let's create a comment. I'll just tap end of how it works section, and this is how it looks right now. Let's go ahead and add some styling to make it look like this. So let's go to our styler CSS file. Let's create a comment. I'll just type how it works section. Now here we can see we have this section with the class of how it works. So let's target that first of all. I'll just type dot how it works. And let's add a padding of 5 rem and 0. And now let's go ahead and set a background color, and let's set it to var bg color. And then let's add a transition, because when we change to a dark theme, we want the background to be changed smoothly. So let's go back. Let's type transition, and let's type background color. And for the timing, let's type var transition speed, and let's type ease over here. And after that we need to have some styles for the timeline. So here we can see we have this division with the class of timeline. So let's type timeline, and let's set the display to flex so that the items are one next to the other. Let's type justify content space between so that they are spaced in a way that they have the full width. And we'll also add a gap. So let's type gap of 2 rems. Right now let's target each of the timeline items. So in the timeline we have these divisions with the class of timeline item. So let's go ahead and type timeline item. Let's set it to text align center. So now all the text is center aligned. Let's add a padding top of 4.5 rem. Let's add a background color of var card bg, which we had already created. And let's set the padding to 1.5 rem for the content inside the card. Let's add a border radius of var border radius. This is also a variable that we created. And let's set the box shadow to var card shadow. And now if you go back, this is how it looks. Now when you hover over this, we'll have some hover effect. So let's tap transition for that, and let's tap transform 0.3 seconds ease, and box shadow 0.3 seconds ease, and background color var transition speed ease. And now let's tap timeline item colon hover, and let's tap transform translate y -5 pixels. And I don't think that the box shadow is changing when we hover over this, so we can just remove this box shadow from here. So this is how it looks. Now each of these cards should have the same width. So for that, for the timeline item, we can just tap flex of 1, and now we can see that all of these have the same width. Right now let's style the timeline icon. So in the icon we have this I tag, which is a font awesome icon. So let's type timeline icon. Let's set the width to 70 pixels and the height to 70 pixels. And let's set the font size to 1.5 rem. Let's set the background color to var primary color. And let's set the color of the icon to white. Let's type border radius of 50% so that we have round shape. And we need to bring it to the center. So let's type display of flex, align items to the center, and justify content to the center. Now here we can see that if we go ahead and right click and go to inspect, we can see that this is the height of the timeline item, but the icon is positioned a little to the top. So for that, let's go ahead and set the position of this timeline item to relative. And now we can position this timeline icon to position absolute. And let's set the top position to negative 35 pixels. And let's set the left position to 50% and translate X to negative 50% for bringing it exactly to the center. Now here we also need to add these numbers. So let's do that. Before that, let's go ahead and create a border, and let's set it to 4 pixels, solid var bg color. And let's also type z index of 2 so that it is above the other elements. And let's add a box shadow of 0.005 pixel var primary color. So this will give us this effect where we have this border around our circle. So if we remove this, we can see that we don't have the outer border. So we are using box shadow to have the outer border over here. Now we need to add the numbers over here below these circles. So for that, let's go ahead and use the after selector. So let's type timeline item :nth child, and let's select the first child. Let's type dot timeline icon :after, and for the content let's type 1. And here we can see we have 1 being displayed over here, but we need to have it below the icon. So here for the timeline icon, let's type flex direction to column. And now we can see that the number 1 is displayed below the icon. And let's add some styles to that as well. Before that, let's go ahead and add these 2 numbers as well. So I'll just copy this and paste it over here and here. And here let's change this to 2. And here for the number, we need to change it to 2 as well. And let's change this to 3. And for the content, let's change it to 3. So now we can see we have all these numbers being displayed. Now let's style it. So let's type timeline icon :after, and here let's set the font size to 0.8 rems. Let's set the font weight to 700. Let's add a margin top of 0.25 rem. Now let's set the position to absolute, and it will be positioned relative to the timeline icon. And let's type bottom of negative 20 pixels. And let's add a background color of var bg color. And let's set the color to var text color. And let's add a padding of 2 pixels and 6 pixels. Let's set a border radius of 4 pixels. And let's also add a box shadow of 0, 1 pixel, 3 pixels RGBA, 0, 0, 0 and 0.1. So this is how it looks. So it is being styled correctly. But we need to have some gap between these 2 elements. So let's do that. Now here we are setting the padding top to 5 rem over here, but after that we are overriding the padding over here at the bottom. So let's bring this down here. And now we can see we have this space at the top. Right now let's go ahead and style these headings. So for the headings we have S3. So here we can see we have this S3 and then we have this paragraph. So let's type timeline content S3. Let's type font size of 1.25 rem. Let's set the color to var text color, and let's add a margin bottom of 0.75 rem, and let's set the font weight to 600. Right now let's style the paragraph. So let's type timeline content P. Let's set the font size to 0.9 rem. Let's set the color to var text muted. Let's set the line height to 1.6, and let's set the margin bottom to 0. So this is how everything looks. Now let's also make this responsive. So here for the original website, if we decrease the width of the browser window, here we can see for this width of around 990 pixels, we have another view, and then we have another view over here. So let's add 3 different media queries. First of all, let's add for this one right here. This is for the tablet version. So let's type at media max width of 990 pixels. And let's type timeline, and let's type flex direction to column so that they are displayed one below the other, and align items to the center. And let's add a gap of 3.5 rem. So this is how it looks. Now let's go ahead and set the width of these timeline items. So let's type timeline item width of 100%, and let's also add a max width. Let's set it to 500 pixels. And this is how it looks. Right now, let's add one more media query for the mobile version. So let's tap add media, max width of 768 pixels, and let's tap timeline item. Let's set the padding to 1.25 rem, and let's add a padding top of 4.5 rem. So let's decrease the width of the browser window. So this is how it will look on smartphone. Let's also change the font size of the heading. So let's tap timeline content S3, font size of 1.15 rem. Let's tap timeline content P. Let's set the font size to 0.875 rem. Let's also change the size of the icon. So let's tap timeline icon. Let's set the width to 60 pixels and also the height to 60 pixels. Let's set the font size to 1.3 rem. Let's set the top to -30 pixels. Let's also select the after selector for these numbers. So let's type timeline icon colon after. Let's set the bottom to -18 pixels. So with that, we have completed styling the how it works section of our website. Now let's also change the font size of this H2 when we are on smaller screens. So we have written the styles of the H2 somewhere around here. So here we can see we have the styles, and here we have the font size. So let's change the font size of the H2 for tablet version and mobile version. So here for the tablet version, I'll just tap H2. Let's set the font size to 2 rem. So this is for larger screens and this is for tablets. And for smartphones, here let's go ahead and type H2. Let's tap font size of 1.75 rem, and I think that looks all right. So with that, we have styled our how it works section, and we have also made it responsive. Right, here's my source code, and let's go to the end, and this is where the how it works section ends. So let's create a new section over here, and let's give it a class of testimonials. And in this, let's create a container division. And in the container division, we need to have the section header. So we can simply go ahead and copy and paste the section header from this section. So let's copy this and let's paste it over here. And let's change the content. So here in the span, we need to type real user experiences. So let's add that over here. And here we need to copy this and paste the text over here. Well, now we can see that we have 3 testimonial cards over here. So let's create a container division for this. So let's go outside the section header and let's create a division with the class of testimonials grid. And in that, we'll create testimonial card. And in this testimonial card, we need to have a header. So in the header, we will have the image, this name, and the role. So let's create a division with the class of testimonial header. And let's create an img tag, and in the source, let's type images/alex_testimonial.png. And for the alt, let's type user alex. And after the image tag, let's create a div. And in this div, we will have a paragraph tag with a class of testimonial author. And let's type alex p. And we need to add freelance developer over here. So let's create another paragraph. Let's give it a class of testimonial role. And let's type freelance developer. So if we go back to our website, this is how it looks. Right now, let's go outside the testimonial header and let's create a division with the class of testimonial quote. And in this, we need to add this testimonial text. So I'll just copy this and I'll just paste it over here. I'll just remove this double quotes, and we will add the double quotes like this. Right now, let's go ahead and copy and paste this testimonial card, and let's paste it 2 more times. And let's change the content. So for the second one, we need to change the image to Sarah testimonial, and here let's type Sarah. And for the author, we need to add the name. So let's type Sarah K. And here for the role, let's type marketing manager. And let's copy this code and let's paste it over here. Let's remove the double quotes. And then for the third one, we have another image. Let's change this to David testimonial, and here let's type user David. And here let's change the name to David L. And we need to change the role to startup founder. So let's type startup founder. Right now, let's go ahead and copy and paste this code, and let's paste it over here. And let's remove the double quotes. Right, this is basically the HTML of the testimonials section. So let's create a comment. Let's type end of the testimonials section. Right now, let's style this. So let's go to the style.css file, and let's create a comment. Let's type testimonials section. And this is how it looks right now. So we have all the content displayed in the website. Now the first thing we will do is we will add some padding to the section, and we'll also need to change the background color. So here we can see for the testimonials we have a different color. So let's go back and let's target the testimonial division, and let's tap padding of 5 rem top and bottom, 0 for left and right. And for the background color, let's change it to var section bg. Now we have already created this CSS variable called section bg. So here we can see, and we have the colors over here. So this is for the light theme, and this is for the dark theme. Now let's go back to our website, and we don't have the styles displayed over here. So let's see what's the problem. I think the class is called testimonials. So let's check it. So it is called testimonials. So let's go back and change this to testimonials. And now we can see that we have the styles being added. We have the background color and the padding being displayed. Now let's also add a transition. So let's type transition of background color var transition speed is. So with that, we have taken care of the transition of the light to the dark theme. Now let's go ahead and style the testimonials grid. So if you go to the HTML file, we have this division with the class of testimonials grid. So let's go back over here, and let's type testimonials grid. Let's set the display to grid, and grid template columns to repeat, auto fit, min max 300 pixels and 1 FR. Now this code will make it responsive, and it will auto fit according to the space that it has. So right now we can see that we have 3 of the testimonials being displayed. If we decrease the width of the browser window, we can see that we'll have just 2 of these displayed in a row. And if we decrease the width even more, then we have just 1 of these displayed. Alright, let's also add some gap between these. So we will add a gap of 2 rem. Now the gap is being added, but since we have this large image, the gap is not visible. So let's go ahead and style the image. So here we can see we have this img tag. Let's also add a class to this image so that we can style it. So let's add a class of testimonial avatar. Now let's add the same class to all the images in our testimonial. So here, let's paste the class. Let's do that over here as well. Alright, now let's go to the style.css file, and let's target the testimonial avatar. And let's set the width to 60 pixels and the height to 60 pixels. Let's set the border radius to 50% so that we have round shape. And let's also add a border of 2 pixels solid, and for the color let's type var secondary color. And let's also type object fit to cover so that we have the correct proportions. So this is how the images look. Right now let's style the testimonial card. So here we can see we have this division of the class of testimonial card. So let's target that. I'll just type testimonial card. And let's go ahead and add a background color of var card bg. And let's set the padding to 2 rem. Let's add a box shadow of var card shadow. And let's set the border radius to var border radius. And we also need to add this border on the left side. So let's tap border left. Let's set it to 5 pixel solid var primary color, and this is how it looks. And now that I see it, I think that displaying the name and this role below the image also looks good. So let's try that. Let's target the testimonial header. So here we can see we have the testimonial header, and that we have this div for the name and the role. So let's target this div. Let's go ahead and type testimonial header. Let's type greater than div. So this will target the direct div that is inside the testimonial header. And let's set the display to flex. And let's set the flex direction to column. Now we have a lot of gap between these. So let's right click over here and go to inspect. And let's see what is the problem. So here for the paragraph, we have a lot of margin bottom. So let's remove the margin bottom of the paragraph inside the testimonial card. So let's tap testimonial card P, margin bottom 0. Right now for the testimonial author, we will make it bold. So we have this class of testimonial author. So I'll just target that testimonial author, and let's set the font weight to bold. Let's add some margin bottom for this testimonial header. So here let's tap margin bottom. Let's try 1 rem. Right now let's also add a transition over here for the testimonial card. So let's tap transition. Let's tap background color, var transition speed, ease, box shadow, var transition speed, ease. Now for the text color of the author, let's type color var text color. And for the font size, let's tap 1.1 rem. Now let's target the testimonial role. So let's tap testimonial role. Let's set the font size to 0.875 rem. Color var text muted. Right now let's target this testimonial quote. So we have this division with the class of testimonial quote. I'll just type testimonial quote. Let's set the font size to 1 rem. And let's set the color to var text muted. And let's set the line height to 1.8. Let's set the font style to italic. Right now we need to have these double quotes. So for that we will use a before selector. So let's type testimonial quote colon before, and let's set the content to double quotes. So we can just type / double quotes. Now we can see we have double quotes displayed over here. Now let's go ahead and set the position of the quote to relative. And now we can set the position of this before selector to absolute. And we can go ahead and change the color to var primary color. Let's change the opacity to 0.35. And let's change the font size to 3.5 rem. And let's change the top position to negative. Let's try 0.25 rem. Let's right click over here and let's go to inspector, and let's open this. Let's select the before. Let's experiment with our position. Let's try with pixels. So here we have 36 pixels. Let's change the font size to 5 rem. Let's also change the left position to, let's try 20 pixels. So this is how it looks. Let's also bring it up a little bit. Let's bring it down a little bit, and we will move the text to the right a little bit. So let's target the testimonial quote, and let's add a padding left. Let's try 20 pixels. And I think that looks alright. So let's add these changes. So for the testimonial quote, we need to set a padding left of 20 pixels. And here we need to set the font size, top and left positions. So let me just copy these three styles from here. And let's paste it over here. Let's go back, and now we can see that we have the correct styling. Let's take a look at the mobile version, and it also looks alright. So with that, we have completed styling the testimonial section of our website. Right, this is my source code. So let's go to the index.html file, and let's first of all write the HTML. So here let's create a division with the class of signup. And in this we'll create a division with the class of container, and let's also give it a class of signup container. And in this we'll create a division with the class of signup content, and in that we will have a heading. So let's copy this and let's create an h2, and let's paste it over here. And after that we need to have a paragraph tag, and let's copy this text and let's paste it over here. And after that, on the right side, we need to have this form. So let's go outside this division. Let's create one more division with the class of signup form container. And in that, let's create a form with an ID of signup form. And let's go ahead and create an input field for the email. So let's create an input, and let's set the type to email. And let's add a placeholder of your .email at example.com. And let's also set the ID, and let's set it to email input. And let's also make it required. And after that, we need to have this button. So let's create a button tag, and let's add the text of get early access. And for the button, we will set the type to submit, and let's add a class of CTA button and signup CTA. Now below the form, let's also create a paragraph tag, and we will have this text that will be displayed after the user enters their email and submits this form. So for example, if I just type testing@gmail.com, and if I press this button, we can see that we have this message displayed over here. So let's create this paragraph tag, and I'll just copy this text and paste it over here. And you need to add it later using JavaScript when we actually send the message. Right here, let's go ahead and give it an ID of signup message, and let's also give it a class of signup message. Right, that's it with the HTML. So let's go outside our division and let's add a comment. I'll just type end of signup section. And let's go to our CSS file and let's start adding the styles. So if you go to our website, this is how it looks right now. So here, first of all, let's add a comment, and let's type signup form or signup section. And here let's type signup. So this is the main division. So here we have this division with the class of signup. And first of all, let's add the padding of 5 rem, top and bottom, and 0 for left and right. And we also need to add this background color over here. So here let's type background linear gradient, and let's type 135 degrees. Let's add the first color to primary color, and let's add the second color to secondary color. And now we can see we have this color. Right now, let's also add a transition for the background, and let's set the speed to transition speed variable, and let's type ease. And now let's style the signup container. So this is the signup container, and in that we have the signup content and the signup form container. So we want both of these to be side by side. So here let's go ahead and type signup container. And let's set the display to flex and align items to the center and justify content to space between. Now inside here for the sign up content, we need to have 50% width. So let's type sign up content and let's type flex 150%. So this is basically the short form for flex grow, flex shrink and flex basis. So it will start from 50%, and if it has the space then it will grow, and if it doesn't have the space then it will shrink. So this is what it says. So now we can see that these elements are one next to the other. Let's also add a gap. So here let's type gap of 2 rem. Right now let's style the h2. So let's type sign up content h2. Let's set the color to white. Let's set the font size to 2 rem. And let's set the margin bottom to 0.75 rem. And this is how it looks. Right now let's style this paragraph. So let's type sign up content P, and let's set the color of the text to RGBA 255, 255, 255 and 0.85 for the opacity. And let's set the font size to 1.105 rem. And let's add a margin bottom of 0. Now here we can see that this section is not stretching across the screen. We have this gap over here. So if we go back to our start of our CSS, here we can see that we have some problems in the CSS. So let's change this to 0. And now we can see it looks alright. Right now let's style the form container. So inside our sign up container, we have this sign up form container. Let's style that sign up form container. And let's type flex 140% for this. And let's add a max width of 450 pixels. Now here inside this sign up form, we can see that we have the input and the button. Now we need these to be displayed one below the other. So here let's go ahead and target the sign up form. So for the sign up form, we have this ID of sign up form. So let's type hash sign up form. And let's set the display to flex, flex direction to column. And let's add a gap of 1 rem. So this is how it looks. Right now let's style this input field. So let's type hash sign up form input with a type of email. And let's set the padding to 0.875 rem and 1 rem. And let's add a border radius of var border radius. And let's go ahead and remove the border. And let's set the background color to RGBA 255, 255, 255 and 0.15. Let's set the color to white. And let's set the font size to 1 rem. Let's remove the outline. And let's set it to none. So now we don't have the outline. Now let's change the color of the placeholder. So for that we can just type sign up form input with a type of email colon placeholder, and let's set the color to RGBA 255, 255, 255, 0.6. Now when we focus on this input field, we'll change the background color, and also we will add this border. So let's go ahead and type sign up form input with a type of email colon focus, and let's set the background color to RGBA 255, 255, 255 and 0.25. And let's add a box shadow for the border. So let's type 0.003 pixels, and let's type color mix, and let's set it to in sRGB. And for the color we will use a variable, and we'll create this variable called accent color, and I will set it to 40%. And for the second color, let's type transparent. Right now let's create this accent color. So here in the root, let's go ahead and type accent color light, and let's set the value to F7971E, and let's add the accent color dark. Now for this one, let's set the hex value to F6AD55. Right now let's use these colors in here. So here in the root, let's go ahead and type accent color, let's type var accent color light, and here for the dark mode let's type accent color var accent color dark. Right now we scroll down, and here we have used the accent color. Let's go back, and now we can see that we have this accent color over here. Let's also add a transition so that we have the smooth effect. So let's go back, and here let's go ahead and for the input with the type of email, let's tap transition, and let's tap background color. Let's set the speed to 0.2 seconds ease, and let's tap box shadow 0.2 ease, and let's go back. The transition is not working. Let's go back, and here we need to add S for the seconds, and now it is working. Right now let's style this button. So for the button we have this button with the class of sign up CTA. So let's target that. Let's type sign up CTA. Let's set the background color to var accent color, and let's add a box shadow of 0, 4 pixels, 15 pixels, color mix in sRGB. For the first color let's type var accent color, and for the percentage let's type 30%, and for the second color let's type transparent. Now the color is not being added over here for this button, so let's right click over here and go to inspect. And for the button we already have this background added, so we can change this background color to just background and it will work. So let's go back over here and let's change this to background. Now we can see we have the correct color for the button. Now when we hover over this button we need to have a different color. So let's go back and let's tap sign up CTA :hover, and let's set the background to color mix in sRGB. For the first color let's tap var accent color. For the percentage let's type 85%, and for the second color let's type black. And now if you hover over this we can see that this is how it looks. Let's also add a different box shadow. So let's tap box shadow, and let's set the values to 0, 7 pixels, 20 pixels, color mix in sRGB, and for the color let's tap var accent color, and for the percentage let's tap 40%, and for the second color let's tap transparent, and let's remove the percentage from here. So let's go back, and this is how it looks. Right now let's style this message. So let's go back, and for the message we have this p tag with the class of sign up message. So let's tap sign up message over here. Let's set the font size to 0.9 rem. Let's set the margin top to 0.75 rem, and let's go ahead and set the text align to center. Let's also change the color. So here let's tap color of white. Alright, so with that we have designed our sign up section of our website. Alright, this is my source code, and first of all let's write the HTML. So let's go outside the sign up section, and let's create a new section, and let's give it a class of FAQ, and let's create a container division inside here. And in here we need to have the section header just like we do for the other sections. So I'll just copy the section header from the other sections. So let's copy it from here, and let's paste it down here. And let's change the text. So for this one we need to have this text got questions. So let's add that over here, and let's copy this text and let's paste it over here inside the h2. And after that we need to have another division for all these different FAQ list. So let's create a division with the class of FAQ list. And in this, for each of these FAQ item we need to create separate divisions. So let's create a division with the class of FAQ item, and in this we need to have, first of all we need to have this question, and after that we need to have the answer. So let's create a button for the question, because this is basically a button. When we click on this we have the answer being displayed over here. So let's go ahead and create a button tag. Let's give it a class of FAQ question, and in this we'll create a span, and let's copy this question from here. I don't think we are able to copy it from here, so I'll just write the question. what makes Nova task different. And after the question, we need to have this icon. So for the icon, we will use font awesome icon. So let's create an I tag. Let's give it a class of FAS and FA plus. And let's also give it a class of FAQ icon. And if you go to our website, here we can see that we have all the details displayed over here. And after this, we need to have the answer. So let's copy this answer from here. And after the button, let's create a division with the class of FAQ answer. And let's create a p tag and paste the answer over here. And this way, we need to create all the other FAQ items. So I'll just go ahead and copy this. And let's paste it 3 more times. Right now, let's go ahead and change the content. So here we have, is there a mobile app? So let's go to the second FAQ item. So this is the first one. Let's fold this. And here let's type, is there a mobile app? And let's copy this answer and let's paste it right here. And then we have the next question, which is how much will Nova task cost? And after that, let's copy the answer. And then the last question, which is, can I integrate with other tools? So let's add that question over here. And let's copy the answer. And I'll just paste it right here. And with that, we have completed creating the HTML of our FAQ section. So I'll just create a comment. Let's tap end of FAQ section. And now let's go ahead and style this. So if you go to our website, this is how it looks. We have all the content displayed over here. Let's go back. Let's go to the style.css file and let's create a new comment. Let's tap FAQs section. And first of all, let's target the FAQ division and let's add a padding of 5 rem and 0. Let's set the background color to var bg color. And let's also add a transition. So let's tap transition of background color. And let's tap var transition speed and ease. Now for the FAQ list, we need to have a set max width. So here we can see we have this division with the class of FAQ list. So let's go ahead and target that. And let's add a max width of 800 pixels. And let's tap margin 0 auto to bring it to the center. And this is how it looks. Right now, let's style the FAQ item division inside the FAQ list. So we have this FAQ item division. In that, we have the question and the answer. So let's tap FAQ item. And let's go ahead and set the border to 1 pixel. Solid var input border. So this is a variable that we had created. And let's tap border radius of var border radius. Let's also add a margin bottom of 1 rem. And let's also add a transition for the border color. So let's type transition border color var transition speed ease. Right now, let's style the FAQ question division. So here we have this FAQ question. It's basically a button. So let's target this. So let's tap FAQ question. And let's set the background color to var card bg. Let's remove the default border. So let's tap border none. Let's add some padding. Let's set it to 1.25 rem, 1.5 rem. Let's set the font size to 1.125 rem. And let's set the font weight to 500. Let's set the color of the text to var text color, and let's set the cursor to pointer. Right now, let's add a transition for the background color. So let's tab transition, background color, var transition speed is. Now for the active question, we need to have a different color. So here we can see we have a different color for the active question. So let's tap .faq item .active. So we'll add a class of active for the active question. Let's tap FAQ question over here. So let's go to our HTML file and let's add the active class over here for the first one. So when we have the active class, we need to have a different styling for the FAQ question. So let's set the background color to color mix in sRGB, and for the first color let's tap var primary color. For the percentage, let's tap 8%. For the second color, let's type transparent, and let's also set the color of the text to primary color. And here we can see this is what it looks like. Now it doesn't have the full width, so let's go ahead and add a width of 100% for the question. And let's also bring it to the left side. So let's tap text align left. Now the color of the text is not working, so here we have already added the color to the FAQ question. So let's right click and go to the inspector, and here for the FAQ question span, here we can see that the color is set, but it is being overridden by this style over here. So it is inside the asterisk selector. So let's go back, let's scroll up, and we need to remove this color var text muted from here, and now it will work. So now we can see we have the correct color for the text. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to bring the icon to the right side and the question to the left side. So for that, let's go ahead and set the display to flex for the FAQ question, and let's tap align items to the center and justify content to space between, so it will have the elements on the extreme left and right sides. Right now let's target this FAQ icon. So let's type FAQ icon. Let's set the font size to 1 rem. Let's also add a transition for smooth animation. Let's tap transform 0.3 seconds ease. Now for the active FAQ item, we need to rotate the icon. So let's go ahead and tap FAQ item .active FAQ icon. Let's type transform rotate 45 degrees, and here we can see this is how it looks. Now we'll also need to change the icon to this icon right here when the question is active, but we will do that later. For now, let's just rotate it. Now by default, the FAQ answer should not have any height. So let's go ahead and type FAQ item, or let's simply type FAQ answer, and let's tap max height. Let's set it to 0, and let's tap overflow hidden so that anything outside it will not be visible. Let's also add transition for smooth animation. So let's type transition. Let's set it to max height 0.4 seconds, ease out, padding 0.4 seconds, ease out. Let's also add background color. Let's set it to var card bg. Now it should be visible when we have an active FAQ item. So let's tap .faq item .active FAQ answer, and let's set the max height to 300 pixels. And let's also style this paragraph inside the FAQ answer. So here we can see we have this paragraph tag. So let's go ahead and type .faq answer p. Let's set the padding to 1.5 rem. Let's add a margin bottom of 0. Let's set the font size to 1 rem, and let's set the color to var text muted. So this is how it looks. Let's go ahead and make the second one active. So let's remove the active class from this first FAQ item. and let's add it over here. And now we can see we have the second one being displayed over here. So with that, we have created the styles of the FAQ section. Right, here's my source code, and let's go ahead and check whether we have linked our JavaScript file over here, and we haven't. So let's go ahead and link it over here. So let's type script:/src and press tab, and here let's type main.js. Right, now let's start adding the JavaScript for the FAQ section. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to select all these FAQ item divisions from here. So I'll just remove this active class from here, and now we have these questions. So let's target these FAQ item divisions. So let's go ahead and type const FAQ items equals document.querySelector all, and here let's type .FAQ item. So this is the class name, and now we need to loop through all these FAQ items. So let's type FAQ items dot for each, and for each of the individual items I'll just call it item, and let's create an arrow function. Now here we need to reference some of these elements. So we need to reference the FAQ question, which is this one right here. We need to reference the FAQ answer and also the FAQ icon, because we need to change the icon once it is active. So here let's go ahead and type const question button equals item.querySelector. So we are just selecting from this item, not from the whole document. So let's type .FAQ question, and let's type const answer equals item.querySelector FAQ answer. And let's also target the icon. So let's type const icon equals item.querySelector FAQ icon. And if you don't have any of these items, then I will just go ahead and return. So let's type if exclamation question button, answer button, or icon. I'll just return. Right, now let's continue with our logic. Now we need to add an event listener to the question button. So this is the question button. So let's type question button dot add event listener, and let's listen for the click event. And here in this arrow function, let's write the logic to close all the other items first. So let's go ahead and type FAQ items dot for each, and let's call each of these items other. So this will be all the other items other than the particular item that we are referring in this for each loop. So here let's go ahead and type if other is not equal to item. So if it is not the item that we are looping through, and let's also add one more condition, which is if the other has a class called active. So we are using this class list dot contains, and if this is the case, then we'll just go ahead and remove the active class. So let's go ahead and type other dot class list dot remove active, and let's also target the icon and the answer. So let's type const a equals other.querySelector FAQ answer. So this will select the answer inside the current item, which we are referencing as other. And let's also target the icon. So let's type const I equals other.querySelector FAQ icon, and let's type if a. So if you have the answer, then we'll just go ahead and add a style. So let's type a.style, and let's set the max height to null. And for the icon, let's go ahead and type i.classList.remove. Now here we can see in the HTML we have this icon called FA+. Now this should be displayed when it is not active. So when it is active, we need to display the minus icon. So we'll just go ahead and remove the minus icon and add plus icon over here. So let's type remove FA minus, and let's type i.classList.add FA+. Now what we are doing over here is basically that when we click on any of these FAQ items, we need to close all the other questions, and we need to just open the clicked question. Right, now let's go back and let's go outside the FAQ items for each, and here we'll write the code to add the active class. So let's type item.classList.toggle active. So what we are doing over here is that if we have the active class, we'll just remove it, and if we don't have the active class, we will add it. So that is what this toggle does. And let's store this result inside a constant. Let's call it isActive. So this constant will now be true or false depending on whether we have the active class. And let's use this isActive to change the styling of the answer. So here we can see for the answer we have this const called answer, and let's set the max height of the answer. So let's type answer.style dot max height equals is active. So if it is active, then we'll just set the answer height to answer dot scroll height. Now scroll height is basically the height of the content inside this element, and let's also append pixels. So let's type plus px, and if it is not active, then we'll just set it to null. And for the icon, let's type icon dot class list dot toggle. So we will remove and add the fa plus class based on a condition. So here for the condition, let's type exclamation is active. So this means that if the FAQ item is not active, then we will have this fa plus class. And here let's type icon dot class list dot toggle, and let's type fa minus. So here if it is active, so let's type is active, then we'll just add this fa minus class to the icon. And now I think this should work. So let's go back to our website and let's click on this first FAQ item, and we can see that the icon is also working. We also have the answer displayed over here. Let's keep this open and let's open another one, and we can see that the other one was closed. So the FAQ functionality is working correctly. Right, here's my source code, and let's go outside the FAQ section and let's create a footer tag. Let's also give it a class of footer. And in this footer, we'll first of all create a container division, and let's also give it a class of footer container. And now we need to have two footer sections. We need to have this footer left where we have this content, and on the footer right we need to have this content. So let's create a division with the class of footer left, and in the footer left we will have an s3 for the logo, and let's give it a class of logo. And here let's type Nova task, and after that we need to have a paragraph, and let's copy this from here. And let's create a p tag, and let's paste it over here. After this we need to create the footer right. So let's create a division with the class of footer right, and in the footer right we need to have this text. So let's copy this. Let's create a p tag and paste the text over here. And after that we need to have these icons. So let's create a division with the class of social links, and that will have anchor tags for each of these. And you can add the links of your social media accounts over here. And in this anchor tag, let's create an I tag for the icon. So we need to have a class of FAB and FAX Twitter. So this will give us the Twitter logo. So if you go back to our website, here we can see we have the Twitter logo. And then we need to create another anchor tag, and let's type hash for now. And here let's create an I tag for the logo. And let's give it a class of FAB and FA Facebook F. So here we have this F icon, and then we need to have the LinkedIn icon. So let's create an anchor tag, and let's create an I tag. Let's type FAB FA LinkedIn in, and then lastly we need to have this Instagram icon. So let's create an anchor tag, and let's type I. Let's give it a class of FAB and FA Instagram. And here we have the Instagram logo. So with that we have completed writing the HTML of our footer. Now let's go to our style.css file, and let's add the CSS. So let's create a comment. I'll just type footer. Now first of all let's target the footer. So we have this class of footer for the footer. So let's type dot footer. Let's set the padding to 3 rem, top and bottom, 0 for left and right. And let's add the background color for the footer. And for the background color we'll create a variable, and let's call it footer bg, and let's create the variable. So let's scroll up, and here inside the root let's go ahead and create a new variable, and let's call it footer bg light, and let's add the color as 06070A. And we'll also create one more variable for the footer text. So let's type --footer text light, and let's set the color to A0AEC0. And let's do the same for the dark theme. So here let's type --footer bg dark, and let's set the color to 171923. And let's type --footer text dark, and let's set the value to 7180 96. Right now, let's use these variables inside here, and we're going to use this in our footer element. So let's type footer bg, and let's set it to var footer bg light. And for the dark mode, let's go ahead and type footer bg. Let's set it to var footer bg dark. And let's also add the text color. So let's type footer text, and let's set it to var footer text dark. And here let's go ahead and type footer text var footer text light. Right now, if we go back to our website, we can see that we have the color for the footer. All right, let's go back and let's also set the text color. So here let's go ahead and type color. Let's set it to var footer text. And let's also add a transition so that we'll have a smooth transition when we change the themes. So let's type background color. Let's set it to var transition speed ease, and color var transition speed ease. Right now, the next thing we need to do is we need to display the two divisions, which are the footer left and footer right side by side. So let's target the container division, which is footer container. So let's type footer container, and let's set the display to flex, and justify content to space between so that they are to the extreme left and right sides. And let's also add a gap of 2 rem. Now let's change the color of the logo. So let's type footer, and we have this S3 with the class of logo. So let's type logo, and let's set the color to var primary color, and let's add a margin bottom of 0.75 rem. Right now, let's style this paragraph. So let's type footer left P, and let's set the margin bottom to 0. Let's set the font size to 0.9 rem, and I think that's it. Right now, let's style this paragraph from the footer right. So let's type footer right P. Let's set the font size to 0.9 rem. Let's set the font weight to 500, and let's set the margin bottom to 0.75 rem. Right now, let's style the social links anchor tags. So let's go ahead and type social links. So here we can see we have this division with the class of social links. So let's type social links A. Let's set the color to var footer text. Let's set the margin right to 1 rem. Let's set the font size to 1.375 rem, and let's also add a transition of color 0.2 seconds ease. Now when you hover over this, we need to change the color. So let's go ahead and type social links A : hover. Let's set the color to var primary color. So now we can see we have this color change. Now let's go ahead and remove the margin right from the last element. So let's type social links P : last child, and let's type margin right 0. So with that, we have styled our footer. Now let's also make it responsive. So let's search for a media query. So let's type media, and here we have 760, and we also have 768. I think we can add all the styles from 760 to 768. So let's copy this, or let's cut this from here, and let's go to 768, and let's paste it over here. So here we have 760. I'll just remove this, and now we have 990 and 768. So let's go to 768, and here let's go ahead and add styles to the footer. So let's have footer container, and we will set the flex direction to column. So now if we decrease the width of the browser window, now we can see that the elements are one below the other. And let's also add a margin top to the footer right. So let's type footer right, and let's type margin top of 1.5 rem. So this is how it looks. Right now, let's take a look at the other sections, and let's see whether everything is responsive. Now this section over here is not responsive, so let's make it responsive. So now for this one, let's go ahead and go to the max width of 768 pixels. And this is the sign up section. So here we have this division with the class of sign up container, and in that we have the sign up content and the sign up form container. So we need to have both of these one below the other. So here let's go ahead and let's type sign up container. Let's set the flex direction to column, and let's also text align to center. Now let's target the sign up content, which is this content right here. So let's tap sign up content, and let's set the margin bottom to 1 rem. I think we can reduce the font size of this paragraph. So let's go to sign up container, and here we have the sign up content paragraph. Here we have set the font size to 1.105 rem. Let's try 1 rem, and I think that looks alright. Let's take a look at the larger screen, and here also it looks alright. Right now let's scroll up, and this testimonial section looks alright. Let's go to the other section, and this also looks good. And this section also is completely responsive. And lastly, we have this hero section. So let's also make this responsive. Now for the 992 media query, so I'll just search for it at media, and here we have 990 pixels. So here let's go ahead and target the hero section. So if you go to our HTML file, here we can see that we have this division of the class of hero container, and in that we have the hero content and the hero image. So we need to have these displayed one below the other on smaller screens. So let's tap hero container, and let's tap flex direction to column, and we need to have the image on the top. So let's go ahead and tap hero content. Let's tap order to. So now we can see that the image is on the top and the text content at the bottom. Now let's also change the font size of this H2. So let's tap hero content. So here we can see we have this hero content, and that we have the H2. So let's tap hero content H2, and let's set the font size to 2.5 rem. Let's also change the styling of the image. So for the image, we have this hero image container division. So let's go ahead and type hero image container. Let's set the margin bottom to 2 rem, and let's set the max width to 400 pixels, and let's also set the width to 80%. Now let's also target the BG shape. So here we can see we have this hero image BG shape. So let's go ahead and tap hero image BG shape, and let's set the width to 100% and the height to 100%. So this is how it looks. And with that, we have made our hero section responsive. Let's scroll down, and here we have this heading. Now for smaller screens, let's reduce the font size a little bit more. So let's go to media, and here we have 768. Here let's go ahead and type hero content H2, and let's set the font size to 2.25 rem. And let's also make everything text aligned. So here in the hero container selector, let's tap text align center. And with that, we have completely made our website responsive. Right here I'm in my source code, and if we scroll up here, we can see that we have this button called theme toggle. So we need to reference this, and we need to add some functionality to this using JavaScript. So let's go to a JavaScript file, and here let's go ahead and reference our theme toggle button. So let's type const theme toggle button equals document dot get element by ID, and let's tap theme toggle, which is the ID of the button. Now we need to add an event listener to this theme toggle button. So let's type theme toggle button dot add event listener, and let's listen for the click event. And when we click on the button, we need to call a function called toggle theme, and we'll just create it right now. So let's create this function called toggle theme, and in this function, what we need to do is basically we need to add a class called dark mode to the body tag. So let's create a variable called current theme, and let's see whether we already have the dark mode enabled. So let's tap equals, and let's also reference the body over here. So let's tap const body equals document dot body. So here let's tap body dot class list dot contains. So this will check whether we have this class. So let's see for the class called dark mode, and if we have that class, then we will set the current theme to dark, or else we'll set the current theme to light. And then we need to toggle the theme. So here let's create a new const called new theme, and let's set it equal to current theme, and if it is light then we'll change it to dark, and if it is dark we'll change it to light. So this line of code will basically toggle this theme into dark or light modes. And then we'll create a variable called apply theme. So let's type const apply theme, and we'll get a theme over here as an argument. So here let's go ahead and call that function. I'll just type apply theme, and let's pass this new theme over here. So here in this function, let's go ahead and type if theme is dark. Then we'll just go ahead and type body.classlist.add, and we'll add a class called dark mode, and let's add an else over here, and here we'll just remove the dark mode class. So let's type body.classlist.remove, and let's type dark mode. And once we apply the theme, we'll also store it into local storage so that after we change the theme, even if we refresh the page, the theme persists. So let's go ahead and type local storage dot set item, and let's create a new key called Nova task theme, and let's set it to new theme. Now here let's also check whether we already have the theme added inside the local storage. So let's type const saved theme equals local storage dot get item Nova task theme, and let's type if we have a saved theme. Then we'll just go ahead and apply the saved theme. So let's type apply theme. So this is the function that we just created, and let's pass this saved theme over here. And with that, we have added the functionality of adding and removing the dark mode class to the body. So now if we go back and if I click on this button, we can see that the theme changes. And if we click on it once again, it changes back to the light theme. Now the themes are changing over here because if you go to our CSS, if we scroll up, here we can see that we have created this light theme variables. So here we can see we have primary color light, secondary color light, and so on. And then we also have these dark theme variables. So we have primary color dark, secondary color dark, and so on. And after that, here we are using a variable called primary color, and we are using this light theme color variable that we created up here. And we are creating the same variable over here, and in the dark mode, so here we can see we have body.dark mode. Here we are using the dark color variable that we created. So we are using this primary color variable down here in our CSS. So it will change based on whether we have the dark mode enabled or not. So that's why we can see that the colors are changing. Now everything is looking alright. We need to change the background of this section a little bit. And we also need to change the styling of the navbar when we are on the dark theme. So let's make the changes. So let's scroll down, and here for this section, let's go back to our CSS. Let's search for sign up. And here we can see we have this section with the class of sign up. And here we are using this background color. So here let's go ahead and type body.dark mode sign up. So when we have the dark mode added to the body, then we will have a different background color. So let's type background color, and let's set it to linear gradient, and let's type 135 degrees. For the first color, let's type color mix. In sRGB, let's type var primary color dark, and let's type 80% over here. And for the second color, let's type black. And here let's also add one more color mix. So let's type color mix. In sRGB var, let's type secondary color dark, and let's set it to 70%. Let's type black for the second color. So now if we go back, here we can see we have a different background color for the dark mode. Now the last thing we need to do is we need to make changes to this navbar. So if we go back to our CSS, and if you go to the navbar, let's search for it. In the HTML file, we can see that for the navbar, we have this class of main nav. So let's search for main nav. And here for the main nav, we have this background color of this color right here. Now for the dark mode, we will have a different color. So let's type body.dark mode main nav. And here let's type background color RGBA 263244 0.3. And now if we go back, here we can see for the dark theme, we have a different color for the navbar, and for the light theme, we have a different color. Right now when we scroll down, we'll also add a little bit of animation to this navbar. We'll just make the height a little smaller. So let's go back, and here we will add a class called scrolled to the main nav when we scroll down a little bit. So let's tap main nav dot scrolled nav, and we'll set the padding to 0.75 rem and 0. And let's also set the box shadow to 0, 2 pixels, 10 pixels, RGBA 000 and 0.07. And for the dark mode, let's type body.dark mode main nav dot scrolled nav. So this is for the dark mode. So here let's type box shadow 0, 2 pixels, 10 pixels, RGBA 000 and 0.25. Now when we are on the dark mode, we also need to change this icon. So let's go ahead and do that. Here let's take a look at the toggle theme button, and here for the toggle theme button, we can see that we have set the display of the FA moon icon to none. So let's display it when we are on the dark mode. So let's type body.dark mode theme toggle button FA sun, let's set the display to none, and let's type body.dark mode theme toggle button FA moon, and let's set it to display of inline block. So now we have this different icon for the dark mode. Right now when we scroll down a little bit, we need to add this scrolled nav class to our main nav. So let's go to our main.js file, and here first of all let's go ahead and target the main nav. So let's type const main nav equals document.querySelector. Let's type .main nav, and we'll also create a const for the scroll threshold. So let's type scroll threshold. Let's set it to 50 pixels, and let's create a function, and let's call it handle nav scroll. And here let's go ahead and type if window dot scroll y is greater than scroll threshold. So if it is greater than 50 pixels, then we'll just add the class scrolled nav to the main nav. So let's type main nav dot class list dot add scrolled nav, and let's add an else, and let's type main nav dot class list dot remove, and let's type scrolled nav, and let's add an event listener for the window. So let's type window dot add event listener, and let's listen for the scroll event, and here we just call this handle nav scroll function, and let's also call it over here directly so that it will run once in case the page is already scrolled. So now if we go back, and if I scroll down, we can see that we have this animation. And let's also change the size of this logo when we scroll down a little bit. So let's go back, and let's go to the style.css file, and here let's type main nav dot scrolled nav logo, because we have this class of logo, and let's set the font size of the logo to 1.6 rem, and let's also make some changes to the styling of the toggle theme button when we scroll down. So here let's go ahead and type main nav dot scrolled nav theme toggle button, and let's set the background to var card bg. Let's set the border color to var input border, and let's set the box shadow to var card shadow, and when we hover over this we will have a different styling. So right now we can see that this is how it looks. If we scroll down, we can see that we have this different styling for this toggle theme button, and let's also change the hover effect. So let's type main nav dot scrolled nav theme toggle button colon hover, and here let's type background color. Let's set it to color mix in sRGB, and let's type var card bg for the first color. Let's type 90% for it. Let's type var text color for the second color, and now if we go back, here we can see we have this hover effect. Let's also take a look at the dark mode, and this is how it looks. So with that, we have completely implemented the dark mode functionality for our website. So there are a lot of different options to host your website. We're going to take a look at a service called Netlify. You can just go ahead and create a free account on Netlify, and it's free to host your websites online over here. And they also have some paid plans. You can take a look at that, and If you are interested, you can subscribe to their plans, but for this simple website, the free version is enough. So let's go ahead and add this website to our Netlify projects. So what you need to do is log into your Netlify account and go to projects. You can also log in using GitHub. And once you go to the projects page, you can see that you have this screen right here. Now there are different options we can select. So the first one is that we can import an existing project from GitHub. The next one is that we can start from a template. So if you browse templates, we can see that Netlify has a lot of different templates. But in our case, we already have this design and we have already completed it using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So what you can do is you can add your website files directly over here by dragging and dropping it into this area right here. If you already created a GitHub repository of your project, you can just go ahead and click on import from Git, and then you can select the repository and proceed, and it will host that website directly from GitHub. But for now, let's go ahead and directly add our files over here. So this is my project and I have copied all the files into a folder called HTML. So here we can see it says we have to drag and drop our project output folder over here. So let's drag and drop this HTML folder right here. And we can see that it says uploading. And now we can see that deploy is successful and we have this random URL for our project. So let's click on get started. And this is our website. Let's open this. So let's click on this project and let's click on this link. And here we can see our website is being displayed and everything is looking all right. We don't have any problems. Let's see whether the JavaScript is working. So the JavaScript is also working. Let's take a look at the dark mode. So this is the dark mode. And let's take a look at the mobile version. So this is how the mobile version looks. So everything is looking all right. Now let's go back over here and let's change the name. So let's go over here to domain management. And here you can go ahead and click on options and click on edit project name. Now here you can name your project. So for example, if I just type Nova task.netlify.app, let's see whether it is available. Let's click on save. And it is not available. Let's type official over here. Let's click on save. And now we can see that our domain name has changed and now the link is novataskofficial.netlify.app. So if we just open this link, we can see that our website is displayed over here. So that's basically how you can deploy your website online for free using Netlify. Now here you can also add your custom domain if you want. You can just click on add domain and you can select one of these options. So that's basically it for this video. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.